On August 31st, 1998, Dragon Ball Z, the previously syndicated first two seasons of DBZ, began to air on
Yes, sir.
Cartoon
It's the
Network's
beginning of a
Toonami
new
block.
era.
And history thing is that actually what they did at one time was they took the tree.
Man, what the why does the TV version look like it? Oh, what is good with y'all young boys and girls? I'm saying thoughts. It's the same life. I got a very special reaction for you guys. This one started the story of Dragon Ball Z on Toonami. And you know what's kind of interesting about this is because Toonami was actually the network I found Dragon Ball Z on. It's kind of crazy because I was young, but it was actually the same arc, and it was when the Z Fighters was fighting Vegeta and Nappa on Earth. And just from that point on, I just every episode was kind of left off on a cliffhanger, and it just every Saturday, every other Saturday, I was looking forward to the new episode of Dragon Ball Z, and that's really kind of how the story how I fell in love with Dragon Ball. You know, just finally get off of Toonami. Most people that live in the West, I want to say that's really how you guys found Dragon Ball was from Toonami. But if you guys didn't find it off Toonami, y'all comment down below how you guys found Dragon Ball, how you guys ended up, falling in love with it. But we just gonna find out. This is a video by Gito 101 week.
Majority of the English-speaking Dragon Ball fandom in America discovered the series for the very first time while watching the Toonami block at
See?
5 o'clock Eastern every afternoon on Cartoon Network. They all watched Dragon Ball Z, and the vast
Facts.
majority of them who are still fans to this day became hooked on the series, would go on to watch the other subsequent series in various different languages,
Facts.
play the video games, watch the movies, and pretty much became fans for life. And many of them are
Fans for
people
life.
like you who are watching this video right now in 2017. Now, 2017 is a very important year in the history of Cartoon Network because Cartoon Network is celebrating 25 years of being on the air.
25
so I'm thinking,
years.
well, if Cartoon Network is celebrating 25 years of being on the air, one of their biggest shows ever, without question, that pulled some of the biggest ratings in the history of the network was Dragon Ball Z, which is my specialty. And thus, on this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth, I present to you Dragon Ball Z on Toonami, the inside story. The entire history of Cartoon Network, Toonami, and Dragon Ball Z's run together. The entire story from beginning to end of an era that literally made millions of people fans of not just Dragon Ball, but anime in general.
What a
Let's
time to
look
be
back
alive.
and celebrate all these years together on Dragon Ball In Depth.
Dun, 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 dun. La, 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 la.
The one and only 24-hour Cartoon Network. Programming for the world at Turner Broadcasting today.
One of the unquestionable truisms about this story is that if it wasn't for Dragon Ball Z and the Toonami block, there would not have been an anime boom in the late 90s. Dragon Ball Z and the Toonami block was one of the biggest contributors to this anime boom, along with Sailor Moon and Pokemon.
Yep, that's Sailor Moon was my sister's favorite anime when I was a kid. Dragon Ball was my favorite anime as a kid, and we both was watching it on Toonami, so that's really crazy, man.
A few other shows that came along after or right before. And there would not even be a Toonami if there was no Cartoon Network. Cartoon Network was the home for Toonami. Greek philosopher Aristotle believed in the theory of the unmoved mover, which, to keep it simple, states that nothing can come from nothing. Something has to come from something. So where did Cartoon Network come from? Cartoon Network was birthed by media mogul Ted Turner. Now, before Cartoon Network was even a
the dude from
twinkle in
TNT.
Ted Turner's eye, he had already become a very successful businessman on television with other networks such as WTBS, the Superstation, then later TNT.
Yeah, I know him more for TNT.
Was the first 24-hour news network, CNN, the cable news network, which many thought at the time was an ambitious idea and one that would fail. I know it's kind of hard for young people to understand this, but at one time, you could not get your news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I believe that.
Years before the internet would even become close to what it is today, and there just wasn't.
Bro, can y'all imagine that, bro? Having to wait night just to check out the news, bro? Like, I'm so blessed to be living in this generation, man.
In a
I hope you
24-hour
guys are
news
too.
cycle in existence at the time. So Ted Turner was the first one to really have the vision of a 24-hour news cycle. Now, in the 1980s, television would become bigger than it had ever been before. There were brand new networks popping up left and right. Cable TV became a household thing in the 80s as more and more families began to have cable installed in their homes and had access to a plethora of new channels. And broadcasting had a huge chunk of cartoons already in their library, but it wasn't until 1991 when they purchased the entire Hanna-Barbera tape library that the idea for a Cartoon Network, much like Cartoon Network's predecessors.
Hold on, bro. I am so slow. I literally thought Cartoon Network produced all these cartoons. I thought Cartoon Network produced Flintstones. Well, no, I didn't think Cartoon Network produced, because I know Flintstones is a really old show. But this is mind blowing right now.
CNN, a 24-hour news network, a 24-hour network that airs only cartoons, would become a reality. And 1 year later, on October 1st, 1992, Cartoon Network was born. I mean, it makes sense. If you have all these tapes of all these different cartoons like Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones and the Jetsons, you got to air them somewhere, right?
Facts.
And the idea for a 24-hour Cartoon Network, again, was met with a lot of skepticism. Who would watch cartoons at 2 or 3 in the morning? Well, the answer was all of us. And as a result of that, the early Cartoon Network began, and a lot of it was strictly Hanna-Barbera and MGM cartoons. And although these were old shows, they really were the foundation of Cartoon Network. And as the network would evolve,
that's what I want to say. These cartoons were the foundation of Cartoon Network. That's what I like, because I know they didn't create them because they're kind of too old to be created by Cartoon Network. But these were the foundations that later led on to the newer anime, like the newer cartoons that were later on in the Cartoon Network. Like
Cartoon Network would start to make its own cartoons like Dexter's Laboratory and the Powerpuff Girls, and they were able to create their own studio to produce these cartoons exclusively and not have to rely on old cartoons to carry the network. So the question you're asking is, okay, that's fair. Where does Toonami come in? In order to fully grasp the genesis of what would become the Toonami block and what it would evolve into, one has to look at the idea behind an action cartoon block that would become the foundation of what would eventually be Toonami.
Well, you know, they primarily children watch cartoons, but adults watch cartoons too. In fact, in the evening, on the average evening, more adults are tuned to the Cartoon Network than are tuned to CNN.
In the evening? That's crazy.
Cartoon Network began October 1st, 1992, and they wasted no time in establishing an afternoon block of action-oriented cartoons, which is exactly what Toonami would become in the late 90s. But in the early 90s, it was called Super Adventures. And much like the rest of the early embryonic Cartoon Network era, most of the shows that would air on here would be directly from the Hanna-Barbera library, such as The Fantastic Four, Space Ghost, Birdman, and the original Johnny Quest, among others. Which is funny because the new Johnny Quest cartoon would actually be one of the big staples of the early Toonami era many years later. Super Adventures would be one of many afternoon cartoon blocks that would air back in those days, alongside the Disney Afternoon and the Fox Kids Afternoon lineup in the early 90s. But they also had Super Adventure Saturday, which is the weekend version, and of course, we all know about Saturday morning cartoons.
Saturday morning cartoons was undefeated. Saturday morning cartoons was so undefeated. After a long week of school, Saturday mornings you get to wake up to your favorite fucking shows, man. It don't get better than that. You got your parents cooking breakfast for you too, bro. Man, it don't get better. That's a great way to start off the day, bro. The great way to start off the first day of the weekend, bro. Great day.
Channel, but nonetheless, Super Adventure Saturday could be seen as a prelude to what would become the Toonami Rising Sun, but more on that later. Super Adventures would last from 1992 until 1994, but they didn't just give up on having an afternoon block of action shows. No, Instead, they rebranded it, and thus in
Rebranded it.
1994, Super Adventures would become Afternoon Adventures, and this time they ran newer shows like James Bond Jr., SWAT Cats, and Captain Planet and the Planeteers, which was actually a cartoon that was produced by Turner Broadcasting. So it was almost like a predecessor, so to speak, to shows like Powerpuff Girls and Johnny Bravo, which would come years later, that would be produced in-house and not be from the old tapes. Afternoon Adventures would last from 94 to 1996, when it would be replaced by the Power Zone. But
so they're all lasting like 2 years.
1996, we have to talk about a very, very important and crucial piece of history that is often overlooked, and that is what happened a year earlier in 1995, the first time that we saw Japanese animation on Cartoon Network.
1995?
You asked for it, and now the Cartoon Network's going to give it to you. 6 hours of intense Japanese animation with Robot Carnival, Vampire Hunter D, and Twilight of the
I've heard Vampire Hunter. I don't remember hearing those other animes though.
Nice move!
It's the Cartoon Network's Night of the Vampire Robots, Saturday night at midnight on the best place for cartoons.
Those commercials just take me back, man. I'm glad you can include them in that video.
And the first time we saw anime on Cartoon Network, it was not in the afternoon. You see, back then, anime was, well, first of all, it was called Japanimation. And during that era, a lot of different anime films and anime TV shows were kind of seen as being taboo because Japanese cartoons were typically more violent and more sexualized.
That's why we like
the
it.
American audience was used to. But Cartoon Network took a gamble, and on January 28th, 1995, starting at midnight until 6 a.m., they aired a 3-movie block called Night of the Vampire Robots on Cartoon Network, featuring 3 anime movies dubbed Robot Carnival, Vampire Hunter D, and Twilight of the Cockroaches. Now, those had actually aired on Sci-Fi Channel a few years prior, but for the broadcast on Cartoon Network, they were, of course, going to be heavily edited and censored, because if you've seen Vampire Hunter D, you know a lot of that stuff ain't for kids. But this was also the beginning. This was the birth, the origin of what would become the anime boom, and it was all thanks to Toonami incorporating anime into its lineup for the after-school crowd. So in 1996, Afternoon Adventures became the Power Zone and would add Speed Racer to the lineup. Another
Speed Racer, I remember
show
that.
Had been dubbed ages earlier for American broadcast, but it's presumed that the reason this show even made it there is because of Cartoon Network producer and executive Michael Lazo. Now, there were a lot of things going on in 1996, one of which being the debut of the English dub, the original Ocean Studios Funimation Saban English dub of Dragon Ball Z, which would begin the same year.
Dragon Ball Z and Toonami. This is what you guys been waiting for. The beginning of what became to be the franchise that everybody loves.
Dragon Ball Z actually made it to Cartoon Network on Toonami. It was running on syndication. Now, I'm not going to go into the entire history and a thorough explanation of what syndication is, but to sum it up, different TV networks would purchase the rights to air the TV shows in different markets. So depending on where you lived in the United States, depended on whether or not you even got to see Dragon Ball Z, and if you did get to see it, when it would air. It wasn't just on one network, and it wasn't just on cable. It was on various networks, one of which, of course, being the WB, which a lot of Dragon Ball Z fans remember watching.
Dragon Ball was on WB?
Either Saturday or Sunday morning. From 1996 to 1997, the combination of Ocean Studios, Saban, and Funimation would produce 2 seasons of Dragon Ball Z for syndication from 1996 to 1998. But it was in 1997 that we would see the birth of Toonami.
Birth of Toonami in 1997.
Long discussions about what to call this damn thing. Lazo, Akins, DeMarco, the whole crew over there at Cartoon Network finally settled on the name Toonami.
How did they come up with Toonami, though?
1997, Power Zone was out and Toonami was in. Originally hosted by Moltar, this would be the realization of the dream of the after-school afternoon block of cartoons loaded with action.
Deep space needs information.
This is the classic cutscenes of the Toonami fucking era. Classic. Classic, man.
The early days of Toonami were very different than what it would evolve into. The first lineup included Thundercats, Cartoon Roulette, Voltron, and the Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. And this would be the
I remember
lineup
the
for
Real
pretty much
Adventures of
all
Johnny
of
Quest and
1997, but then in
the first anime
1998,
that he mentioned.
we began to see the incorporation of new shows, well, new old shows, like Robotech and Transformers. But the big coup that changed Toonami would happen on June 1st, 1998,
Sailor Moon.
when Sailor Moon aired for the
Man,
first
my
time
sister
on
was
cable
obsessed with this
television,
show.
became part of Toonami. And try to understand that during this era, Sailor Moon was as popular, if not more so, than even Dragon Ball Z
Yep.
was. So this was huge, huge for Cartoon Network.
Yep.
Am I talking to him?
Today at 4.
I never really got into Sailor Moon. I just couldn't really get into it. But Dragon Ball,
It's all girl action. Sailor Moon.
August 31st, 1998, Dragon Ball Z, the previously syndicated first 2 seasons of DBZ, began to air on
Yes, sir.
Cartoon
It's the
Network's
beginning of a new
Toonami,
era.
and history was made. Without question, if it wasn't for Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, the anime boom would not be what it is. Sailor Moon and
I
Dragon
believe
Ball
that.
Z together helped usher in the era of anime being a popular thing to watch, and would open the doors for more anime to be brought on, such as Ronin Warriors, such as Gundam Wing, Tenchi
Whoa,
Muyo,
Gundam Wing was on Toonami?
Outlaw Star, and all the other big shows from Toonami. It all started really with Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z. Now, as I mentioned, these DBZ episodes were already aired in syndication for the past couple of years. They were heavily edited, they were dubbed by the Ocean Group, they were tremendously censored, but most of the kids who were watching at the time had no idea that there was a more gorier, uncut version out there
Yep.
in other countries.
That's right.
So they would just watch it because Dragon Ball Z was a great show to watch, and the series skyrocketed on Cartoon Network and quickly became the most popular show on the network. But they ran into a bit of a problem
What happened?
because, well, to put it simple, they ran out of episodes. They only had 50
Oh, yeah, they only did 2
censored,
seasons.
dubbed episodes to air, and that was it. So once we all watched our hero Goku finally make it to planet Namek and knock out Raccoon with one elbow, it was back to the arrival of Raditz for what
oh
seemed
hell
like
nah. Oh hell no, I would have been big, bro. Imagine next episode you thinking it's gonna be another new episode and they start over from the very first. I would have been like, man, what? That's literally what happened when I was young and I was watching Toonami. I'm like, bro, what? This can't be the end of Dragon Ball. Like, I literally was doing my own research, bro. But at the time, I didn't even know where to find the rest of the Dragon Ball Z episodes, so I had to wait until they actually produced and made more English dub of Dragon Ball Z. That's how I had to do it. But I appreciate it though, because that just made me want more Dragon Ball. That just really got me hooked into Dragon Ball, because I'm just like, I need to find out what else happened on the rest of this story. I need to find out.
Now, in addition to the early TV episodes of Dragon Ball Z that were dubbed at the time, Funimation and Ocean Studios also dubbed exclusively for home release the first 3 Dragon Ball Z movies, Dead Zone, The World's Strongest, and The Tree of Might. And these were produced significantly different than the TV
All
episodes.
classics.
They weren't anywhere close to being as censored. They kept the original Japanese music. They were dubbed with a better script, and some consider this to be the greatest dub in the history of DBZ because
Wow.
of how good it was with the Ocean voices talking like an actual serious anime release, not a goofy censored kiddie cartoon that would be what aired during the DBZ run on syndication. But what's interesting is that actually what they did at one time was they took the tree.
Man, what the Why does the TV version look like... It looks just like the uncut version, but he's not holding him by his head. He's holding him by his chest. And what the fuck? Why does Gohan look like this? Gohan looks like a fucking dummy. Like, he looks like a literally a dummy, not even like a real person. Nah, y'all see how they animated? What the fuck?
Tree of Might movie and cut it up into 3 episodes and aired it on syndication sometime during the Namek saga. So there are actually 2 original Ocean dubs of the Tree of Might movie. One that was cut up for TV and one that aired on the home video version. So Toonami needed more Dragon Ball Z, so they went with the 3 Dragon Ball Z movies and would air the movies on 3 consecutive weeks on Friday with commercial breaks for the first time ever on television. Now, the Tree of Might version that they used for week 1 was the edited Ocean dub version with the replacement score from Shuki Levy. However, when it came to showing the World's Strongest and Dead Zone, not only did they air the uncut home version,
they aired the uncut version,
which not only had a much more accurate script to the original movies, but played the original Kikuchi score for the first time ever on Cartoon Network, but also they hired the world famous legendary trailer voice of the time, Don LaFontaine. So if you watch these movies when they first aired, the legendary voice of the movies, you heard the epic trailer voice of Don LaFontaine talking about Goku.
In a world that's powered by violence, it's Christmas Eve in L.A.
Oh, this guy's voice?
John Kruger, Harry Tasker, and New York cop.
He does a lot of commercials.
Now, they're about to collide. His loyalty is to a child, fighting for everything he holds dear. They would steal a child for the key to immortality, but now they must face his father.
Oh, snap. The memories are running through my brain right now, y'all. I love seeing these Dragon Ball commercials when I was young, bro. Oh, he's the voice that did this?
His name is Goku. He will see the return of his son. Pray for those who took him this Friday. The battle
That's dope.
Begins again. Cartoon Network presents a special Dragon Ball Z movie.
Voice of Masako Nozawa,
the original Goku,
for the first and maybe only time on Cartoon Network.
Only time?
For his brilliant mind, he needs the world's strongest fighter. Goku's gonna give it to him. Cartoon Network presents the exclusive premiere of a special Dragon Ball Z movie.
I never really watched this one that much. The World's Strongest, I never really watched that movie a lot. I probably watched it like 3 times.
And that's certainly not the only top-notch voice talent that was involved with Toonami during this time period. It would be a crime if I didn't talk about C. Martin Croker, the voice of Moltar, the original host of Toonami, and a man who would be very, very important when it came to Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and everything that came out of that branch. After Moltar, Cartoon Network decided to create its own unique host for the block, the Toonami Operations Module, otherwise known as Tom the Robot. And this also had a very strong
the legendary Tom the Robot.
The original version of Tom was voiced by Sonny Strait, who is known as the voice of Krillin in the Dragon Ball Z Funimation dub. And then all the subsequent versions of Tom were hosted by Steve Blum, another legendary voice actor who also has a connection to Dragon Ball from years prior. Steve Blum voiced Goku in the very rare Dragon Ball GT final bout for the English release of the PS1 game.
Dragon Ball GT had a video game.
Tom would introduce the shows to you, give his commentary, sometimes review games, as well as sometimes give inspirational speeches to all of us watching at home aboard the spaceship Absolution. And it would be these little bumpers and promos and video packages that so many of us would remember as being such high quality editing, and you could tell that there was so much love put into these things every single time they aired. And Cartoon Network really had a knack for explaining to the viewer what a show was about within 30 seconds, which to me is why so many people remember this era so fondly. And speaking of legendary voices, besides just Steve Blum and Don LaFontaine and all these guys that were major players, who could forget the fact that Toonami recruited Peter Cullen himself, the legendary voice of Optimus Prime, to do some of the best voiceover work and narration in the history of the network.
Vegeta, full-blooded Super Saiyan, heir to royalty.
I ain't gonna lie, that sound hard, bro.
Well, after the 3 movies aired, Cartoon Network was once again out of episodes. Dragon Ball Z fans wanted to see what happened.
They should have
wanted to see
just
Goku fight
they should have just
Frieza.
went over
They
and
wanted
dubbed
to
the
see
whole
where
movie.
the story
The
would
whole
go,
series.
and many of them did not have access to fan subs or tape trading or watching the show in other languages. So Cartoon Network took the initiative and teamed up with Funimation and said, hey, give us more Dragon Ball Z. And thus Funimation would begin production on what would become season 3 of Dragon Ball
That's
Z.
crazy because Funimation has been doing Dragon Ball like literally ever since. Like they have not left Funimation ever since. So I'm grateful that Funimation actually took on the challenge to dub the rest of the series. Man, I'm grateful. I thank you, bro. You blessed a lot of us.
The problem was that Funimation at the time was not a financially healthy company, and thus, in order to cut costs, they could no longer outsource to Ocean Studios in Vancouver and had to find new voices to voice these characters. So what they did was they held auditions in Texas and found who would
Sean
become
Schimmel,
the cast
Chris
of Dragon Ball
Ayers.
Z, the Funimation cast of Dragon Ball Z, featuring Chris Sabat, Sean Schemmel, and many others who would actually stay on to voice these characters even to this day. Now, because this would be on cable, Funimation had a little bit more elbow room to make the series less censored, so we saw more blood and way less censorship than they had previously with Saban. Now, speaking of Saban, because there was no Saban, there was no Shuki Levy involved in this dub, so they had to reach out for a new composer, and that's when they found Falconer Productions, which I have.
Bruce Faulconer. We are not worthy. We are not worthy. Bruce Faulconer has the most epic soundtracks, bro. The most epic themes, bro.
Toonami would promote Dragon Ball Z Season 3 as a major deal. This was the long-awaited second half of the Frieza saga when Goku...
I got so hyped seeing Goku turn Super Saiyan on the commercials.
And they took a page right out of the Bible and called it the Dragon Ball Z Second Coming.
The future of the planet is in your hands. Tell us where the Dragon
These
Ball
commercials bring back so many memories. Get ready for the second coming. All new Dragon Ball Z coming soon.
So by the time we got...
If you didn't watch these commercials as a kid and get hyped, I'ma just assume you hated your childhood.
Season 3, Dragon Ball Z's ratings began to skyrocket, and the series would gain such a cultural following that it would become a part of pop culture, often being the #1 program of the week on cable television between the ages of 9 and 24. Consistently, Dragon Ball Z was ranked in the top 3 programs on all of television,
My go anime. This is my go anime.
competing with shows like CBS Survivor, competing with WWF Monday Night Raw, and other
Wow, I was
huge
competing with
shows of the
WWF?
time. In fact, at the time, Dragon Ball Z was such a huge pop culture staple that it even received an article in the Wall Street Journal condemning the show for its violence and its brutality. You know when the Wall Street Journal makes an article complaining about you being too violent for kids, you know you've made it. So once the Frieza saga came to an end during its first run, there were still a handful of episodes at the end of the Frieza saga, part of Season 3, that we would know as the Garlic Jr. saga. So what Toonami did, instead of airing it on its regular afternoon block, Cartoon Network would begin to establish its own Saturday morning cartoon block like it did in the early 90s, but this time it was called the Toonami Rising Sun, and that's when they aired the Garlic Jr. saga. But that wasn't enough. Dragon Ball Z continued to grow in popularity, Funimation began to rake in the money, and thus the rest of the series was finally set to be dubbed, and thus Season 4, 77 new episodes of Dragon Ball Z would begin airing starting on September 1st, 2000, and this would cover the entire Cell saga and be known as Season 4 of Dragon Ball Z. Now, we're talking about the original run seasons, not what they list on the Orange Bricks. The Orange Bricks cut the series up into 9 seasons, but that's completely fabricated because Dragon Ball Z was not 9 seasons on Toonami. It was only 6, as Season 5 would begin the following year with the Otherworld Tournament and the first half of the Buu Saga, and then Season 6 would finally air the year after that in 2002. but that would be cut up into 2 parts. So Dragon Ball Z would
Dang.
continue to air all the way until the last episode aired on April 7th, 2003. But of course, by this time, Dragon Ball Z
Dang, the last episode of Dragon Ball Z aired in 2003? Dang.
GT and Dragon Ball had also began being dubbed, and Toonami would air those series as well. Dragon Ball Z came to an end in April of 2003, and then we'd get our expected.
Like, I know, I thought the Toonami version, I know the original Dragon Ball didn't end in 2003. The version that they aired on Toonami ended in 2003. But damn, I thought it would have ended a lot earlier. 2003, that's a little bit late.
Those original first 2 seasons that were dubbed by the Ocean Group, would we ever get an unedited Funimation in-house dub? The answer is yes. In 2005, Cartoon Network would begin to air the ultimate uncut editions of the first 2 seasons, dubbed in-house by Funimation, with composer Nathan Johnson doing the music. This would appear late nights and would be the first time that American audiences would see an English dub of the first 67 Dragon Ball Z episodes without them being all chopped up like the original first 2 Ocean/Saban seasons were. So once all the episodes of all the series had finally aired, Dragon Ball Z just became one of those shows that people watch whenever they wanted to.
Because it was
and
good.
Toonami would show other anime and debut other shows in the years to come, but none would really have the same impact that Dragon Ball Z had.
My go
during
anime.
that late 90s anime.
My
boom.
go anime.
But one thing that I found very, very interesting is that many years later, on April 1st, 2012, Adult Swim actually aired Dragon Ball Z along with other classic Toonami era anime as part of their April Fool's run. This was the original version that aired in the 90s and 2000s with the Bruce Faulconer score, exactly like how it aired the first time, which was a nice treat for those fans nostalgic for the era of coming home after school, sitting in front of the TV and watching Earth's mightiest heroes defend the universe from the worst tyrant in existence.
Awesome times.
But alas, nothing lasts forever, and in 2008, the Toonami block came to an end. But there's been a few revivals here and there, and really, anime is still being shown on Cartoon Network consistently, even to this day.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for the Toonami block, none of this would be possible. That block exposed so many people to so many different shows, and it's a time period that will never be forgotten for those of us who had the pleasure of living through it. The more things change, the more they stay the same, as even to this day, Cartoon Network is still airing Dragon Ball, currently airing Dragon Ball Super, Saturday
Dragon
night,
Ball Z
as
Kai.
well as Dragon Ball Z Kai.
Wow.
And none of this would be possible if it wasn't for that original Toonami run and the importance of Toonami, not just on Dragon Ball Z, not just on anime, but I would dare to say all of animation. And it all began with the genesis of Cartoon Network, which would create Toonami, create the anime boom, or at least significantly help push the anime boom, which is really why many of us are still here today talking about the series, covering the new series, and just having a blast. Thank you so very much for allowing me to create this video for you.
This was a
It
good
lot
video,
of work,
Geekdom.
and I appreciate if you've watched the
Banger
entire thing
video.
and made it this far. I am very blessed and humbled to be talking about Dragon Ball Z, and I know for a fact that if it wasn't for this Toonami run, I would not be doing this. So it's very important to always remember that. No matter how many mistakes the original English dub made and how many dubisms there were and all the problems with it, it really created that new audience that would eventually become hardcore fans, which is many of you. So I thank you for that, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth. I hope you have a great day, and let's all celebrate 25 years of Cartoon Network, and let's hope we get another 25.